So what we're going to look at right now is how we can solve simultaneous equations that are our word problems. The hardest part for people is how do we actually set up our equations. So everything that you've been practicing, you've been given two equations that you know how to work with, and you don't think about what x is, what y is, what the multiplying factors are, you just go through the process. In part one of an exam, or in exam one, or in part one of your test, when you're allowed to use your calculator and allowed to use your notes, it is really common to have this type of problem in the set of questions that you've got to complete. Because it's not just about doing the routine operations, it's about understanding as well. So let's run through a couple of examples, and I'm going to show you not only how to solve them, but how you set up your working out. So when you do it on your calculator, how do you show your working out to get full marks on the test? Alright, so I'm going to say Miriam. I don't know if that's correct. Miriam buys 5 pears and 2 kiwi fruits for £3.90. Is it still cents with pounds? I'm not even sure. Does anyone know? 2 pence? 90 pence. £3.90. Rightio, cool. So we've got $3.90. At the same grocers, Dave buys 3 pears and 1 kiwi fruit for £2.20. Find the cost of 1 pear and the cost of 1 kiwi fruit. It's important that they go to the same grocers, because if they're at different grocers, they go to different prices. Yeah? Yeah. Alright, so we've got to set up an equation here. What we want to do for our working out is we want to define some variables as our first step. So, step 1, define the variables. And this process is actually worth marks. When I used to teach specialist maths, defining the variables was actually worth marks in the test. So all I actually say, what are we actually working with? In this case, I would say let P equal the cost of a, what do you think? Pear. Let K equal cost of a kiwi fruit. That step of defining a variable is your first mark on the test. Alright? Second step. Create your equations. Okay, we've got to somehow try and get 2 equations here. We've got 2 things going on. We've got 2 unknowns. We need 2 equations to be able to solve them simultaneously. What could my equations possibly be? Well, we know that 5 pears, so 5p, plus 2 kiwi fruits, 2k, is equal to £3.90. Are we sure about that? Are we sticking with pence? Yeah. Yeah, alright, cool. Okay. £3.90. And we also know that, what was it? 3 pears plus 1 kiwi fruit equals 220. Now, if this was in a technology-free part of the test, what method would you use to solve these simultaneous equations? Elimination method or substitution? Elimination. Good. I would use the elimination method for this as well. But because we're going to assume that we're in the technology-enabled part of the test, we're going to use the CAS calculator. Okay, how do I do that? So on your calculator, you're going to go menu, algebra. Yep, I'll get one in a minute. And then down to solve a system of equations. And then we're solving a system of equations number 1. You can use this one in this case because it is linear, but just use number 1. It works for everything. How many equations do we have? 2. What are our variables? P and K. Put a comma between them. And it sets up your little solve command line for you, ready to go. So now all I have to do is type it in. 5 45p plus 2k equals 390 and 2p, was it 2p? 3. K equals 0.7.
Plus K equals
T equals 0.5. And what I would normally do in terms of my working out, at this line here, I would say solve these equations for P and K. And I actually write that in words and then my answer. So these bits that I've got in red are the steps that you show when you are working it out on your calculator. Alright? Sorry? You will be able to glue them in. I'm going to do one more example though. Do I need to clarify anything about this before I rub it off? No? Okay, one more example. We're going to do E. Cards are 65p each, and gift wrap sheets are 45p each sheet at a gift shop. Owen buys 21 items from the shop and spends $11 or £11.85p. How many cards and how many gift wrap sheets did Owen buy? So working through this problem. First thing, what are our two variables?
C and S.
C and S, what does C and what does S represent?
C is cards and S is, or you could go G for gift wrap sheets.
Easy. Does it matter which letter we use?
No.
No. That's why when we define the variables, it doesn't actually matter which letter we use, but we have to write what we're going to call them. So if we say, let C equal, now do we want the cost of the card or the number of cards?
The cost.
Why do you say the cost?
Because we don't have a certain number of cards.
We already know the cost. What are we trying to find in this question?
How many?
How many of each one? So if we're using C, remember C is for the unknown value. What's unknown? The thing that's unknown is the number of cards. So let's C equal the number of cards, and let, did you want to say S, or I don't like using S's because S's often look like 5s when you're doing it quick. Alright, so I'm actually going to go with W for the wrap. Okay, we've defined our variables. The next thing we have to do is create our equations. How can we create our two equations from this information? And what Angus is doing right now by rereading it is probably the suggestion that I was about to make. Alright? Reread these questions a couple of times and try and highlight the important information. So, cards are 65p each and gift wrap 45p. We've got 21 items from the shop. He buys 21 items for a total cost of $11.85.
We know he buys 21 things.
We know he buys 21 items. Awesome. So the number of cards that he gets, so the number of cards he gets is C,
Yeah.
plus the number of gift wrap sheets that he gets is a total of 21. Okay, now we're going to use the cost and the cost as my other equation. How can I possibly make this another equation?
C equals 65.
We do know that C equals 65p,
W equals 45.
and we know that W equals 45p. How are we going to bring that together with the total? So in this one, this was the total number of cards plus wrap, yeah? We know that the total number of cards plus the total amount of wraps as a cost was $11 or £11.85. Except this doesn't take into account the cost yet, does it? That's just how many cards there are. Each card costs 65p or 65 cents if we're talking our Australian dollars. So if I take the number of cards and multiply that by 65.65, we take the number of wraps and we multiply that by 0.45, then I'll get the total cost of $11.85. So we've got the cost of the card times by the number of cards, plus the cost of the gift wrap times the number of gift wraps, and equals the total cost.
How are you going to tell the calculator that?
How am I going to tell the calculator that? Exactly like I just did. Excellent question. So what we want to do now that we've got our equations is we're going to solve this for C and W. So I go down to my calculator. Menu. What comes next? What comes next?
Solve system of equations.
What comes next?
Is it that one or the linear one?
I always just use the top one.
Okay.
Alright, always works. How many equations do we have?
Two.
What are our variables?
C and W.
The calculator gives me the template. Hopefully that's actually on here, not too low. I'm worried that it's a bit low.
No, it's it.
And then we simply type it out. So C plus W equals 21. And then 0.65 C plus 0.6, was it 45?
Yeah.
W equals a total of 11.85. So W equals 9 and C equals 12. And you can check, does that add up for the first one? Does 9 plus 12 equal 21?
Yes.
Yes.
And then you could do 12 times 0.65 plus 0.45 times 9 to check that it's that one. But I'm pretty confident the calculator's going to
I
be
can still do it.
Sweet? Alright, what I would like you to do now is choose 2 more questions from that slip to do them in your workbook, please. I want you to use your calculator and I want you to show you're working out like I've demonstrated on the board. If you like, you could put this straight into your summary journal as an example of how you show you're working out when you're doing it on the calculator.
Me and Jack got to the question where it's written out from